Hey, what's up? This is Justin, the Lesser Dog Tutorials, and this is episode 8 in the Elden Ring Soulslike tutorial series for Unreal Engine 5. So in this one, we're going to be doing UI stuff, and this is going to be fairly simple, but it's going to take a little bit of time. The point of this is that we need to be able to see our character's health and our stamina, and then have abilities affect our stamina so that we can limit how often we can use these things. So let's just dive right in. First thing I'm going to do is import the file I have linked in the description. But first, in the content folder, I'm just going to create a new folder. Actually, no, I'm going to go in the Rune Retriever folder, create a new folder called Textures. And in here, this is where I'll put the image. So I'll just drag it to the folder and we will import. And so now that it's in here, I'm going to go back to the Rune Retriever folder. I'm just going to create another folder called Materials. So now I want to open the actual image. And we're going to change a couple things in here. First one is the texture group from World. We're going to switch it to UI. And then the compression settings right here, we're going to switch that to User Interface 2D. And I think that should be good, so we'll save that and we can close it. And now we'll head back over to the Materials folder and we're just going to create a new material. And we'll call this M_stacked progress bar. Now I'm going to be following essentially a tutorial I found elsewhere, and I'll link that in the description too, where he can create bars using a material, so health bars and stamina and things, and it will have that effect that you see in Souls-like games where the health will go down immediately, but behind it will be maybe a yellow bar that stays there for a little bit so you can see how much damage you received, and then it will kind of interpolate down to match where the main bar is. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we go along. So we'll just open up this material right here, and we'll make some changes in here. So if you select this main node, we can change the material domain to be from surface to user interface. And then the blend mode should be translucent so that you can actually see through it. And then we'll right click and we'll add a sample texture node or texture sample. And we'll want to right click that and convert it to a parameter, and we'll just call this texture. And then down here at the bottom, if we select this, you can actually switch over to the parameters tab, and then we'll select the white bar that we just imported. And then we're going to add a couple nodes here. So we'll hold 1 and left click, and that will create this little constant. And then we can convert this also to a parameter, and we'll call that top progress. And then we'll do it again, convert that to a parameter, and it'll be bottom progress. And if you select the top progress, then we can set the slider max to be 1. So it's always going to be in between 0 and 1. And for the default value, we'll just do 0.5. And for the bottom progress, same thing. We'll do the slider max to be 1. And then the default value, we'll just say is something like 0.2. Next, if you hold 3 and left click, you'll create a constant 3 vector. And we can also convert that to a parameter, and we'll call it background color. And we'll go ahead and just leave it black, but we'll set the alpha to be 0.9, so it's just barely see-through. Now, before we get too deep into this, I think what I'm just going to do is create a simple bar that's not going to use the background yet, but it will still show us the things that we need to see. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to add a multiply. And the multiply will go into the final color. And for the A, we're doing the RGB of the texture. But for these, we need to create an if node. And so it's just saying what is A, what is B, and what do we show based on the values of A or B. You know, it's pretty simple. It's just like a standard if statement. And so we'll want the text coordinate, and then we'll want a mask, but this is actually a component mask. And we'll want to untick the G. So it's just R. And then this will be A. And then B will be the top progress. And the bottom progress we can just kind of put over to the side for now. And the background color will be if A is less than B. And then the result of this will be what the B is. And then we need to create another color for whatever the top of the bar will be. So we can actually just copy and paste the background color, and we'll rename this to be top color. Yeah, top color's there. So top color will actually, I have this backwards. So bottom color is if A is above B, and then if A is less than B, we see the top color. And for the top color, let's just change that to white. And make sure it is, the alpha is 1. All right. So you can kind of see what the bar is, and if you were to change the color of the background to be, oh, I don't know, red or something, then you see that the background here is visible, and the health is at 50, because if you the top progress, if you look at that, I have the default value at 0.5. So if you brought it up a little bit, you'd see it changes. If you bring it down, so that's essentially just your health bar. We'll get more into using the bottom progress in a bit, but we just want to make sure that this stuff helps us see that our abilities are doing the things they need to do. Next, we'll want to go to the Rune Retriever folder and then Blueprints, and in this folder, we're going to create a new folder called Widgets for the UI. And then in the Widgets folder, we're just going to we're going to right click, go to User Interface, and then create a widget blueprint. And we'll just select User Widget right here, and we'll call it WBP underscore stacked progress bar. And then we can just open that up. Move it over here. Okay. And so in here, we just want to drag in an image, and we're going to rename this image to stacked progress bar image. And we want to make sure that's a variable. And then for the brush, we can search for our material for the stacked progress bar. And once that has been set, we can move over to the graph. So in the graph, we can delete all of this stuff, and we're just going to create a function that we'll just call update. And what we want to do is have two inputs. Both of them will be floats. And the first one will be called top progress. And the bottom one will be called delta seconds. And then back in the event graph, we actually do still want the pre-construct. And what this is going to do is create a dynamic material instance. So if we create a variable here, and we just call this dynamic material instance, we can find it in the dropdown, dynamic material instance dynamic, and we can make sure that the private tick box is checked, and we want to set this, but we want to create the dynamic material instance to set. So what we want to do is add an other variable that we'll call material instance, And the material instance will have this little eyeball open, and that makes it instance editable. And then we want to do blueprint read only and also make this one private. Now we want to drag this out, get it, and then create a dynamic material instance right at the beginning here. And the return value will be setting this dynamic material instance variable. And then after that, we're going to get the stacked progress bar image and then set the brush from material. And then the material is the stacked progress bar right there. So then we can compile and save. And then back over in the update, we need to add 3 variables, and they're all going to be floats. So the first one will be animation speed. Switch that to a float, add a new one, bottom progress, and then top or previous top progress. Now in our material, we don't use the bottom progress yet, but we will. So we can just go ahead and act like the bottom progress is active because we don't want to come back and change this. So first thing we do is bring out the previous top progress. And from the current top progress, we're going to do a subtract operator, and we're subtracting the previous top progress from that. And then we're going to multiply by -1. And all of the stuff I'm doing here will be in the video I have in my description. I'm just kind of following a tutorial that already exists because it's exactly what we're looking for. So then I'm going to bring in the bottom progress, and we're going to add the result here to the bottom progress. And then we're going to set the new bottom progress to be equal to this. Then we're going to take the top progress here, but we can just right click and say top progress and get that. So we're just getting this. And then we're going to set previous top progress. So with that done, then we can set the scalar values, scalar parameter values within this, the top progress and bottom progress. We can set these based on our health. So all we need to do is get the dynamic material instance, set scalar parameter value, and we're going to do this twice, so we can just copy and paste, and the values we're changing are top progress and bottom progress. The value that we're setting is same name, top progress, which is the one we're passing in, right? It's this one right here. And then the bottom progress right here. Now we just need to figure out what the bottom progress is doing. So all we need to do here is set the bottom progress. And then we're setting it to, we're going to do some math here. We take the animation speed, which we can set the default value of this to maybe 0.5. And then we are taking the delta seconds. That's not it. Delta seconds, get delta seconds. And we're just multiplying these two. And then we're taking the bottom progress, and we're just subtracting the result of this multiplication, and then we're clamping the min is 0 and the max is the bottom progress. And then that result is what we're setting bottom progress to. Cool. Now we need to create a material instance for the health bar. So head over to the stacked progress bar material, right click, create a material instance, and we'll call it m underscore health bar instance. So now we have the health bar. In here we can change the color, so the background color is red and the top is white. Why don't we just change the top to be red because that's the health. For the background color, we can just change that to be a sort of black, but 0.9. So that way you can kind of see behind it, but it's still going to be black like an empty bar. And then in the health bar, you can see that it's red, and you can't see the black, but that's fine. Back over in the widget, we have to change this material instance variable type because it is a dynamic material instance, and we want it to just be a normal material instance. So once you select that, we can change the variable type. And I'm not sure that's going to go away, so I'm just going to close it. And now we can set it to be, once we compile, we can set it to be our health bar. So the next thing I think I want to do is just create a stamina bar and then a mana bar. So with this stacked progress bar, we're just going to do this again where we create another material instance. And I created two, one for the mana bar and then one for the stamina. All right, so in the mana bar, all we're doing is changing the top color to be blue. Nothing special. And then stamina will be green. Cool. Now I want to make another widget, which will be the HUD. So I'll just select this user widget, WBP underscore HUD. And then we'll open that up. So I want to make a canvas right here. Canvas panel, that'll be the top. And then under this, I'll do a vertical box, which will have each of the bars, so the health, mana, and stamina. And then for the vertical box, we'll say that the position X is 40, position Y is 30, size X is 100, and size Y is 30. That should be fine. We'll also do size to content. Next, I want to add a size box so we can specifically say what the size is of each bar. And then we will add in a user created the stacked progress bar inside the size box. And then for the size box itself, we're going to override the width and height. And for the width, we'll do 500. And for the height, we'll do 20. So that's just one bar. And then if we wanted, we could duplicate this 2 more times. And then for the top size box, we can add padding on the bottom of 8. And then we'll do it for the next one down. And so now they're kind of spread apart and they're up in the left corner, kind of where they should be. So now we just need to specify what material these use. So for the top one, we have the health bar instance, and that's what the material is. And then for the second one, we want this to be the mana bar instance. And then the last one, we want that to be the stamina bar instance. Next, I want to go to the third person character blueprint. And up here at the top, I'm just going to add the HUD to the screen. And all we need to do for that is right before attach equipment, I'm going to go ahead and get the player controller. And then from that, I'm going to create a widget And specifically, this is going to be the HUD widget. And then we want to add to viewport and make sure that the return value is linked up to the target. So with that done, we can kind of play it and see if it adds. And it is. It's up there where it needs to be, which is good. The next thing we're going to do is in the Rune Retriever folder, in the Blueprints folder, we're going to add another folder, and we're going to call this Interfaces. And then within that folder, we're going to create a new interface. So if you go to Blueprints, you can see there is Blueprint Interface right here. It's like that. And we'll call this one I_progress bar interface. And if we open that up, we can just add 6 total functions to this. So the first one that's in here, we're going to rename it to get health. And we can add an output pin to this, which is going to be a float. So make sure that the function itself is selected, and then you can edit that. So we'll switch the Boolean to a float, and we'll just call this result. Next, we'll want to expand the advanced section because we want to tick the constant checkbox. Once that's done, we just want to select the function, Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste, and we'll call the next one get health as ratio. Duplicate this function a few more times so that we have a get stat and get stat as ratio function for health, mana, and stamina. Now back over in the HUD blueprint, head over to the graph, and we're going to fill out a few things here. All we need from the functions that currently exist is the event tick, and then we're going to also add another event that is on initialized. Next, let's create a Boolean variable that we're going to call initialized. And this variable will be set on the event on initialized. But let's just take a little side track here and rename these variables so that we know what they are. So the first one here, I'm going to rename to health bar. The second one I'll name mana bar. And the third I'll name stamina bar. That should help us understand what these are a little better. Back over in the graph, we want to look for get owning player pawn. And once we find that, from the return value, we want to check if it implements our newly created interface. So if we find the does implement interface node, we can then add the I_progress_bar interface to it. With this section done, we can move down to the tick section. And what we want to do is check the status of the initialized bool. So we're going to do a branch to see if it's true or not. But I think before that, we want to make delta time a variable. So we'll right click that and promote it to a variable. And we'll just put that right here, right after event tick and before the branch. And then from the true output pin, we'll do a sequence, and the sequence will update each of our stat bars. So we'll want 3 output pins. Next, we'll want to get the get owning player pawn node, and from that we're going to get the health as ratio function, and this will be present on the player because of the interface. And then we can drag in the health bar, and then from that we'll look for the update function that we made in the stacked progress bar widget. And then we will hook that up to the get health as ratio, and then the result we can just plug into the top progress. And for the delta seconds, we're just going to use the delta time. So if we drag that in and get it, we can just plug it in there. And then make sure that you do the same thing for each of the other bars and make it look kind of like this, so that for the mana, we're doing the mana ratio and then updating the mana bar, and then the same goes for the stamina. Next, we want to actually say what the functions in the interface do. So if we open the BP_rune character blueprint, we can make sure that this blueprint implements the interface. So head up to the class settings, and then on the side where it says interfaces, we can add our progress bar interface. now that that has been added in the interfaces dropdown, you can see all of the functions right here. And I don't know why get health is not in default, but whatever. So let's open up the get stamina as ratio. And then in here, we're just going to do a few things. It's relatively easy. We're just going to first get the stamina using the function get stamina. You could just drag it in if you wanted to also. And then the result, we're going to divide. And the thing that we're dividing is the max stamina. So if we get the max stamina, and the max stamina was determined and created in our C++ files when we made the ability system. And then the result of this division can just go into the result output pin. And then each of the other two ratio functions will still do the same thing. It's just instead of stamina, we're replacing it with mana or health. So feel free to complete those on your own. Now for the get stamina function, it's going to be just like the get mana and get health. We're going to pull in the ability system component, get the float attribute from the ability system component, and the return will go to the result. We just have to swap the attribute for the correct attribute associated with the function. And you can do that for the other two also. Next, I want to head back over to the stacked progress bar widget blueprint because I'm going to change some things we missed in here. And for the animation speed, if you select that variable, we're going to make sure it's instance editable. We're going to also have it be blueprint read-only and private. Make sure the animation speed is set to 0.5 and we're good for that. Then select the bottom progress and we'll make sure that's private as well as the previous top progress. So one thing I forgot to do is in the stacked progress bar blueprint, the widget blueprint, in the event graph, we have this set brush for material, and what we needed to do is actually link up the dynamic material instance to the material. And once you compile and save, you'll see that all the bars get updated, and if you were to play, you'll actually see that they're black now, and that's what we want. This is now perfectly implemented. All we need to do is set the starting stats for the character because right now everything's at 0. So all of these bars are going to be black because there's no value there. So let's go ahead and create the starting stats for the player and get those bars working. So to get some starting stats in there, it's pretty simple. We're just going to go to the blueprints, abilities, and just in here, we're going to create a blueprint class, and it will be the gameplay effect class. And then we can just say that this is GE underscore player starting stats. Opening that up, all we really need to do is add 3 modifiers, but you'll want to add all of the stats for your starting stats. But for right now, all we care about is health, mana, and stamina. So for each of these, we're just going to select health, mana, stamina. And for the magnitude, we'll just say that health is 100, 100, 100. And compile and save. And then in the third person character class defaults, we have a section here, which is default attribute effect. And then we just want the player starting stats, compile and save, and hit play. And so now you see all the bars are max. If, for instance, we wanted to change the health that we give to be 80, then you hit play and you'll see that the health is at 80, and so everything's working well. So now I just want to implement some costs for like the roll ability. So if you roll, it doesn't actually use any stamina, but we can make it use stamina, and then we can have the stamina recharge back up slowly. So let's implement that, and then we can get kind of a good example of how abilities will affect the character stats. All right, so in the main folder, we're just going to go over to the Rune Retriever Blueprints Abilities folder. And then in here, I'm going to add a new folder, and I'm going to call this Stamina. So in here, we're just going to create a bunch of gameplay effects, and then we'll go in and add the data to them. So the first one, it will be a gameplay effect. And we'll call that GE recharge stamina. And then we'll duplicate it. Then we'll call this one GE spend stamina. We'll duplicate that one and call it GE pause stamina. So let's first go into pause stamina. So this is going to be, instead of instant, we're going to do infinite. And this will only grant a tag. So in the granted tags section, we're going to add, and we're going to say it's a player. So we'll just go ahead and hit this little thing next to the player, and it'll be player.attribute.stamina.pause recharge. So it's adding this tag, that's all it's doing. And then we'll open up the spend stamina. So when spend stamina occurs, it's going to remove the pausing of the recharge, because the pausing of the recharge will be when the stamina has reached its max. And then when we spend stamina, we're going to unlock it, so it will no longer be paused, and it will perform the recharge until it's full. So in the spend stamina, all we're doing is removing gameplay effect with tags. So if we go in here, we can just say in the added section is the pause recharge, and that's all it's doing. It's just removing this. And then the reason that that's all it's doing is because when we create something like a gameplay effect that reduces something like stamina to perform something, it will be based or inherited from this, and then this will just happen automatically. But then with everything that we inherit, then we can just specify how much stamina is being reduced. We always want this occurring. And lastly, in the recharge stamina, we want to set this to infinite. And we'll just say that it has a modifier that adds 1, and we'll say that this is stamina. And then for the period here, we can say that it is something small like 0.05. And then we're going to say down in the ongoing tag requirements right here, we're going to add in the ignore tags section the pause recharge, which means that if this tag is present, we don't perform this. Now let's create a spending stamina gameplay effect for rolling. And we'll base it off of this spend stamina. So you can right click it and create a child blueprint class. And we'll just say that this is roll stam cost. If you open that up, you'll see the remove gameplay effects with tags right here is already set. So we just need to say that we're instantly removing 20 from stamina. And then we can compile and save. And what we'll want to do now is create a gameplay queue that is fired in perhaps the recharge, where it will read and see how much stamina the character has, and if it's max, then it will know when to pause the stamina recharge. So we'll just actually up in here, I think this is where you do it. So tools, gameplay queue editor, and we're going to add a new gameplay queue tag, and it's going to be called gameplay queue dot stamina check. And we can add a new handler, and we'll choose the top one. And we'll call that, well, it's good, actually. So then we'll close that, and then we can move this to where it needs to go, which is in the stamina folder. All right, let's open up the gameplay queue. And what this will do is just do the on execute. We don't need this, but what we want to do is take the target, cast to third person character. And then we'll want to get the ability system, get ability system component, which will get the float value, float attribute, and then we want stamina. We want to see if it's greater than or equal to the, from the third person character, max stamina. Plug that in, and we can branch. So it will branch here, and if it's true, then we want to get the ability system component return value, and we're going to say apply gameplay effect to self. Now the effect that we're wanting to apply should just be the pause stamina gameplay effect. So if the stamina is greater than or equal to the max stamina, then we'll pause the recharge. We don't need to recharge anymore. Now we just need to go over to the recharge stamina gameplay effect, and we want to add the gameplay queue here, and we just add the stamina check tag. And then we need to head over to the roll ability right here. And then we're going to look for the cost gameplay effect class. And what we're looking for is roll stam cost. Over in the roll stam cost, make sure this is -20, not +20. All right, so the last thing that we need to do should be the adding of the recharge stamina gameplay effect to the character. So at the beginning, we're already recharging the stamina. And if you recall, we are doing the gameplay queue check every frame, but that only happens if this recharge stamina gameplay effect is added to the player. So we'll just add that real quick. Take the ability system component, apply gameplay effect to self, and the effect is recharge stamina. All right, let's give that a go and see if it works. There you go. I roll, and it uses stamina, and then stamina just recharges all the way up, and then stops recharging when it hits max. Head back over to the stacked progress bar material, and we'll finish things up in here. Let's see. Let's unhook that and this. So the background color goes to A is greater than B. And we might as well just duplicate this. Now you can follow that link in the video description where the person in the tutorial will lay out all of this in a much more understandable way, but I'm just going to make it so it works. So the bottom one here goes to the opacity, and then the alpha goes to the A is greater than B down here. And then we want another if statement, so I'll copy and paste it. And then I will take text coordinate, put that right about here. bring in that top progress. And what we're going to do is have an add node where we're adding the bottom progress and the top progress. And the result will go into this B here. But we can also add a reroute node and have it go into the B here too. And speaking of which, add a reroute node to the top one and put that into the A. So A and B are both the same up here. Now we want the mask to be in the if statement down here. And then the top progress will go into the B down here. And then for the top color, the output can be both in this and this. So we're just going to add a reroute node, put that here like that. And then for the A is greater than B, we're going to be using the bottom color. So we'll need to make a new one. So go ahead and hold 3 and we'll left click and then right click and convert to a parameter. We'll call this bottom color. And this is the one we want to make kind of a yellowish or orange sort of color. Like that. And then that will go into the A is greater than B. Okay. And then the result of this if statement will go up into both A is equal to B and A is less than B. And then for these two, we'll just do a constant 1 and make sure that that is set to 1. And that will go into both of these. All right, so with that done, we can save it and check out if it works. And if I hit R, you'll see that the character is rolling, stamina is being spent, and there is the yellow kind of residual line behind the stamina bar so that you can kind of see how much you lost. So that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little bit about the gameplay ability system. And hopefully at some point I will be able to return to this series and we can kind of see more of how to recreate an Elden Ring or Souls-like game. However, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you around.